In 2003, the Cramer fire overran and killed 2 firefighters on the Salmon Challis National Forest. Less than 10 years later, in 2012, the Mustang Fire burned 340,000 acres covering the same location. It is important to understand the fire behavior history of the area you fight fire in. If you have been or plan to be involved in wildland firefighting, chances are that you will experience fire assignments in the Salmon River breaks. The fires that have burned in this country are a part of wildland firefighter lore, including 2 fatality fires as well as several hundred firefighter entrapments and shelter deployments. Many of these have been used in the past as training case studies, such as the Ship Island Fire and Mortar Creek Fire back in 1979, the Butte Fire and Lake Mountain Fire of 1985, the Clear Creek Fire in 2000, and the Salt Fire in 2011. This country is characterized by deep river canyons with very steep slopes frequently bisected by rugged ridges. The terrain has significant effect on weather patterns. Diurnal winds are common. Cooler air sinks into the canyons at night, displacing the warmer air, creating thermal belts. These inversions allow mid-slope fires to burn all night long, spreading downhill and down valley with the winds and ember rollout, often hooking containment lines. The steep terrain offers few opportunities for roads and helipades. The sheer amount of energy that crews expend to hike into a fire can leave them spent. Often the aerial delivery of firefighters and supplies is the only logical method. Terrain also forces base camps and helibases to be located far from their fires. While it is difficult to get firefighters to the fires, it is even more important to remember that it is difficult to get them out.
On the Salmon Challis National Forest, in the last 33 years, we have had 208 firefighter entrapments. That's a big deal. We've been blessed that we've only had 3 fatalities as a result of burnovers. Those people are not stupid. Something's happening with that fire behavior that for some reason they're not anticipating. And then it happens and they get caught. The Salmon River Breaks country had a historical fire regime that the majority of the landscape was a frequent low severity fire regime. We have grasses, we have elk sedge, we have pine grass, we have fuels that tend to dry out in July and August and are available to burn. The historic fire regime also, as the current fire regime has, a lot of natural ignition, so we get a lot of lightning. As the storm cells track from west to east across central Idaho, they get into that river corridor, and as those storm cells hit that high elevation mountain range, they tend to stall out and they just throw down lots of lightning. It's an enormous pattern, and when you see it on a map, it's just a concentration of ignitions, not just strikes, but ignitions. And these fires would burn long ways up the mountain, if not all the way up to the top of the mountain, maybe even in a day. But they were cool, what we would call cool fire, a low severity fire, leaving most of the overstory alive. The large trees generally were not killed, but the seedling and the saplings were thinned out. And as a result of excluding fire, which occurred at the beginning of the 1900s, these little tree seedlings have grown in, and they have essentially created a stair step, a ladder fuels. A lodgepole grows in under the Doug fir, and the Doug fir grows in under the ponderosa. They just take advantage of that absence of fire, and we now have a changed fire regime. We have a vertical fuel profile that exists now that allows a surface fire to spread from the lower limbs of a little tree to the limbs of a medium-sized tree to the limbs of an overstory canopy. It sets the stage for crown fire or extreme fire behavior. These fires not only burn hot, but they move very fast. We see runs of 15 miles a day, 12 miles a day, significant long runs of high severity fire. I'm not sure we fully understand all of how the pieces fit together. Why is it on some days when you have about the same wind, the same Haines index, the same relative humidity, that fire sits there and pretty much does nothing. Just sits there and cooks. You know, no great advancement, it doesn't even hardly pull a column together. And the next day you think it's almost the same situation, and that thing blows up and just chunked out 20,000 acres. And it chunked out 20,000 acres in one afternoon. So I think that there are some things that we line up on fire weather wise, and then we just need that wind to get above maybe 10 miles an hour, or we just need that relative humidity to get just below 15%. And I think we're learning about those things, and we're learning how to apply them. But sometimes I think there's something else going on, or a combination of those things that go on that don't allow us to say, today at 2 o'clock, this is the moment. There's something else in there, and then it lulls us. It tends to lull us into going, I've been working on this fire for 3 days, and the weather forecast is identical. It ain't doing anything. My safety zones now is maybe a half a mile away, where before it was a quarter of a mile, but we're chinking this line in. I don't have any hard black, but I'm going to be okay. And then all of a sudden, whatever lines up, and that thing blows up.
The Salmon River breaks have demonstrated time and time again that if you deploy resources without the understanding of what that fire history and what the extreme fire behavior is and what to expect from extreme fire behavior, that you will put and will continue to put firefighters at risk. Looking at the fire history maps, there are some patterns, and that one of those patterns is that winds blow predominantly from the southwest, and especially prefrontal and strong winds associated with frontal passages. So a lot of your fires will and have shown strong extended runs to the northeast. The other part to that is that almost always in the Salmon River breaks, the west side of the fire, or the west flank, is your easy catch. It's the one that the wind blows most from. During the summer, you might experience on an average every 7 to 10 days a frontal passage. Those should be expected. If you have gone 3, 5, 6, 7 days without a wind event, your probability of one occurring within the next few days is quite high. In order to describe this most extreme fire behavior and fire behavior runs, I'd probably best describe it on the Butte Fire. They asked me to go up. I was the Air Ops branch director, and keep an eye on the fire, because it was starting to build and looked like it was going to make a run. And so by the time we flew from the helibase out to the head of the fire, it was making a major run. Flame lengths that were just unimaginable, and approaching the fire line where all of the firefighters were, we could see this small little glows of fusees that had been lit along the fire line, and they were spread out along the fire line looking to burn out and try and hold the fire line. Looking back down the hill at what was coming at them, it was just a futile effort. The smoke column itself actually ignited and caused a huge gaseous ball to roll up the hillside. It moved 4 miles in minutes. We flew over and had contacted 1 or 2 of the division soups and explained that they were about to be overran and to move to the safety zones. 1 minute after that, we tried to make another circle around and come back in and see if people had gotten to the safety zone, and the fire had overran all of them. And it was probably the most gut-wrenching, most awful feeling I've ever experienced in my life. And we got a call, and I reported that the fire had overran the line, and the IC asked what the potential was for serious injury or fatality. And that's a very tough decision and a very tough thing to answer. So I turned to Glenn Johnston and looked at him, and he said, he just shook his head, said, "I don't think they made it." I looked at the pilot, and the pilot, everyone on board the ship confirmed that we probably had a lot of major fatalities and serious injuries. So I'll never forget my response. I thought for a minute or two before I answered, and my answer was, I'm not optimistic. That situation and that horror of the moment that existed, that we could have easily had 73 fatalities or more in that situation. Fortunately, we had done the right thing in terms of putting in the safety zones, and even though they were somewhat criticized in terms of not being big enough, they were, I think, the sole reason that that many people survived. If you look at the final fire size of the fire, it really didn't get that much larger than what the burnover occurred. It just burned another mile or two beyond the ridge line and petered out when the wind stopped blowing. And we could have easily picked it up then and not put all those folks at risk. So yeah, you look back and those are the memories, those are the snapshots in time that affect you the rest of your life in terms of what your tactics, strategies, and what you're willing to do and not do.
The Cramer fire started on July 19, 2003 from a lightning strike. It was detected the next day by Long Tom Lookout at 1630. 20 minutes later, a McCall, Idaho smoke jumper aircraft was diverted from another mission, but was unable to put smoke jumpers on the fire because of high winds. Jumper 41 estimated the fire at 3 acres, burning in light fuels on a 60 to 70% slope with a high spread potential. By 1800, Air Attack, 2 BLM engines, and the Moyer Type 3 light helicopter and crew are dispatched to the fire. Moyer crew member Matt Shaddle is the assigned IC Type 4.
As I remember, fire behavior that year on the Salmon Chalice National Forest was just picking up. We were starting to get some significant initial attack fires, conditions that were similar to those that we saw in 2000 when we had the big Clear Creek fire on Forest, and really stuck out in the minds of those of us that had been around. Anytime I would get a call to the Salmon River breaks, that point of the evening, that time of year, you know you're going to be getting some significant fire growth. You're going to be experiencing quite a bit of rollout, steep, nasty, rugged country. You're going to be dealing with thermal belts more than likely. And it's one of those you just kind of, at least for me, you just kind of cringe.
By 2000, Moyer Helitack and the 2 engines are at Cove Creek Helibase. Matt Shaddle and his IC-4 trainee recon the fire in the Moyer helicopter.
At the time we were doing our initial recon, just from the size of the fire, the resources we knew we had inbound, we knew we weren't going to be able to catch the fire that night. Immediately ordered up a Type 3 IC before we even hit the ground at H1. So our plan from our recon was to try and secure that westernmost flank of the fire to be able to give the incoming Type 3 IC something to work with in the next day.
They are dropped off at H1. The IC-4 trainee stays at the helispot to brief the 5 engine crew members as they arrive. Shaddle scouts the west flank.
You always have that. Things look different from the air. Well, it's really common up there just because you overestimate how easily you're going to be able to move around. With dark setting in, I cliffed out a couple times. We were getting significant rollout on the fire throughout the night. You'd hear a rock, tree, log, whatever it might be, break loose. You'd kind of start counting. It'd be 20 to 30 seconds before something would stop rolling out. It took me from 2000 until roughly 2300 to be able to reach the top portion of the fire. Just the sheer nastiness of the terrain, we decided not to engage the fire at that time.
The next morning, the fire has grown to 35 to 45 acres and is turned over to a Type 3 IC. Midday, a Type 2 contract hand crew arrives at Cove Creek Helibase and is flown up to H1. Due to weight limitations and distance, it takes over 3 hours until the entire crew is on the fire. The crew puts in line from H1 towards the east, but it is forced to retreat in the late afternoon as the winds pick up, pushing the fire east over the ridge into Cramer Creek. They try to hold the line above H1, but erratic winds blow the fire across their line. The IC removes the crew from the fire. Some fly off H1, but most hike down to the Salmon River Road and are picked up. At 1830, the fire creeps over the west ridge and into Cache Bar drainage. In discussions with the Forest Supervisor's Office, the IC is optimistic they can catch the fire the next day if he can have 2 medium helicopters and personnel for logistics and operations support. He is told the Type 2 helicopters are committed and to use one of the Helitack crew members as a strike team leader to supervise the crews. After flying the fire, the IC gives an 0900 briefing at the Cove Creek Helibase. Each day the weather is getting progressively warmer and drier, 90-degree temps and RHs in the low teens. The zone forecast says a weak shortwave disturbance could move through the area bringing northwest winds 5 to 15 miles per hour. He tells the crews to expect stronger winds in the afternoon, like the previous days. Resources for the day include 4 Type 2 crews and the Moyer and Indianola Type 3 helicopters and their Helitack crews. The strike team leader will be running ground operations, while the IC has to stay at Cove Creek to run logistics and other ops. The strategy for the day is to fly 3 crews into H1, use 2 of the crews to secure the fire's east flank and 1 crew to anchor the fire to the west. Insert 2 repellers above the fire on the west ridge to construct another helispot, H2, to be used for flying in the 4th crew to secure the fire's west flank. At 0929, the Indianola Helicopter 193 launches with repellers Jeff Allen, a Class B faller, and Shane Heath, a C faller, on their mission to construct H2. From the air they are shown their safety zones, which are approximately 200 yards down the ridge. Over the site it's estimated that it will take 1 hour to clear half a dozen large trees and a number of smaller ones for a Type 3 helicopter helispot. At 0943, they rappel in and confirm contact with dispatch.
Colorado Dispatch, Alan on Long Tom.
Helicopter 193, Central Idaho.
Dan, this is Alan. We just rappelled in. I was just establishing communications, and we're going to begin cutting this helispot.
Copy you loud and clear. Thank you.
At 10:47, the crew shuttle to H1 begins, using the 2 light helicopters 166 and 193. Donnie Dance is one of the Helitack crew members offloading the crews at H1.
The fire wasn't doing a lot. It was still in the inversion. However, below H1, where myself and a couple other Helitack were, there was a small spot fire caused by some rollout that was putting up some light smoke, but it was starting to pick up with intensity. We were able to get some bucket work on it. We started the crew shuttle, and the idea was to move 3 crews, so 60 personnel, loads for the Type 3 helicopters that were there. You're averaging 2 to 3 people a load and about 15-minute turnaround time, so it was an all-day event.
Around 12:20, the IC calls H1, inquiring about expanding it for medium helicopter use.
Yeah, if you've got time, could you look around that helispot there and see if we can improve it any way for a possible medium?
That's a firm. We'll improve it as much as we can for you.
If that radio conversation was overheard or relayed to Jeff Allen and Shane Heath at H2, it is unclear. What is known is that they ended up cutting and clearing over 20 sea-sized trees and many smaller ones. Throughout the day, when asked for progress updates at H2, they always replied that they needed more time. At 13:04, Cramer Air Attack leaves to refuel and have lunch. Lead Plane 41, which is directing retardant drops, takes on some of the air attack duties. At 13:26, Helicopter 166 takes off with the IC for a recon of the fire. Most of the fire activity is below H1, with 4 to 6 foot flame lengths interrupting the crew shuttle for bucket work. The eastern flank is backing down into Cramer Creek with low intensity 1 to 2 foot flame lengths and still looks catchable. Over H2, one of them waves at the helicopter and Jeff Allen reports there's a little more work to do. The IC tells them to call for pickup when finished. In the cache bar drainage, the fire is slowly creeping its way down slope. The fire is burning in the litter underneath the 3 to 4 foot tall brush. Cache bar had a stand replacing fire in 1985 and now consists of rock outcrops, grass, and shiny leaf ceanothus brush. Kelly Close was an investigator for the Cramer Fire Accident Report.
And they're so used to the ceanothus brush fields not carrying fire very well. They use them as safety zones. They use them tactically as a place that they can catch a fire. Fire hits the brush fields, drops down. And I think that was in the back of everybody's minds. The Weather Service was so off with their forecasts so often that the IA crews more or less just disregarded what they got from the Weather Service. They really didn't think it was anything they could rely on, depend on for their weather for their fire behavior, and they assessed their expected weather and fire behavior for the day on what it had done the previous day and the day before that.
By 1400, the shortwave disturbance moves into central Idaho. The winds are reaching H1.
The smoke was starting to pick up and fire intensity, and it really triggered that train of thought of, should we be here? Is this still a safe environment? What should we do? And it wasn't just a few minutes later where the wind did pick up to a point where we closed H1 due to visibility issues, and then shortly after that we retreated to our safety zones and watched H1 burn over.
At 1423, in a radio communication with the Forest FMO and dispatch, the IC is concerned about fire growth on Cramer.
Just wondering if there's any way maybe you could head out to Cove to Hella Base so we could fly this and take a look. This thing's kind of going in all different directions.
By 1430, the smoldering fire has reached the bottom of Cache Bar drainage and has an active flaming front by 1440. Starting at 1444, the IC and strike team leader discussed disengaging from the fire.
Yeah, due to a bunch of different variables, we're going to hike off this fire. We're regrouping, and we're going to pull off the line right now, and we're going to have to make some different strategies.
I copy that. Do you have all three crews with you, Heath?
They're not here at this time. They're pulling back, and we're all going to group up here at H1, and then we're going to hike off.
Yeah, we just can't do much, with the resources we have, and trying to get them in there in a timely manner to catch us first thing in the morning.
Be firm on that.
Yeah. I've also got to get a hold of Jeff Allen up on H2. We need to get him out of there, too.
Why don't you go ahead and pull them out? We're fine where we're at. It's just pretty windy up here, really gusty, and visibility is not that great.
If you guys want to just slowly work your way down to the road, we'll get some vehicles down there to pick you up, and we'll go get Jeff and Shane on H2.
During that radio exchange, the Hella Base contacted Jeff Allen at H2 using lead 41, and Allen said they needed another 40 to 45 minutes. At 1454, Air Attack returns over the fire and notes the increased fire behavior. Talking with lead 41, he learns that the repellers are going to be picked up from H2. Later, due to similar personnel names, they thought the pickup mission had occurred.
You had strike team leader working down at H1, whose first name was Heath, and you had Shane Heath working at H2. You had Alan Hackett, the IC, and Jeff Allen working at H2. So depending on whether they were using the first name or the last name, Alan or Heath, who was where. And they thought Heath and Alan were both down either at H1 or the Hella Base.
Then, at 1505, Jeff Allen calls Hella Base.
Cramer, Hella Base, H2 on Long Tom. This is Hella Base, H2, go ahead. Yeah, bud, we're ready for pickup. All right, we'll send 193 on its way. Do that, send him in a hurry, bud.
And what's happening is we got fire below us. We've got smoke coming right at us. And when we talk about decision gates, I think that's an important one, because first time they request a helicopter and there wasn't immediate verification that it was leaving, just, yep, we'll send 193 on its way. Okay, send them in a hurry, bud. And that's 1505, 20 minutes after they just told the Hill Base it was going to take them another 45 minutes to finish their job. So they've decided it's time to go, send them in a hurry. They don't sound panicked, but they're definitely making the point that do it now, don't do it when it's convenient. 4 minutes later, they haven't heard anything back. So at 1509, they call back to the Hill Base.
Will, what's the status of 193? They're still here on the ground. They're going to be spooling up shortly to come pick you up. All right, we need them right now. Hella Base, did you copy? We copy. We're sending 166 to get you right now. Do that, thanks.
And the problem with that was both 193 and 166 were both down at the Hill Base being refueled. 193 is the one that was having its 30-hour maintenance done. 3 minutes later, 1512, they call back again because they haven't heard anything. What's the status of the ship?
Hi, Jeff. The helicopter needed some fuel, but it's going to start spooling here right now. Any problems right at the moment?
Oh, bud, we just got fire down below us, and the smoke's coming right at us, so just make them hurry up.
Yeah, they're spooling right now.
And if they go down to the safety zone, they're going to miss their ride out because they were told the helicopter's coming. It's spooling up now. It's going to be off the ground shortly. So why would they go down there when the helicopter's on its way? If they go down and hunker in the safety zone, they're going to have to walk down to the river, and that's some pretty nasty ground. They hang out here another few minutes, they'll catch their ride. Life is good. I do have to think, though, or at least wonder, if they came over this knob down to where we're standing now, which is the first place you can get a really good view down into the cache bar drainage. Granted, it was smoky, but if it was me, I'd be curious. I'd be wanting to know what the fire is doing because I had smoke coming at me. I'd be wanting to get a better view, and you could easily come down this far and take a look and not be too far from H2. The fire was traveling roughly about a mile an hour, mile and a half an hour, and this would have been a place that I would have tried to gauge the rate of spread. And if I'm gauging the rate of spread by what it's doing there, and I don't consider acceleration, I just consider that that's the rate of spread that it's going to continue at, I'm going to figure I have a certain amount of discretionary time before I absolutely have to be out of here. I should be concerned about fire below me, but it's a long ways away. It doesn't spread that fast in shiny leaf ceanothus, and therefore I have this much time. And in reality, they have this much time. Air attack is back in the area. They later described what they saw at that point as this sheet of flames across the hillside. The heavies were burning big flaming X's on the hillside, flame lengths in the brush 30 to 50 feet at the leading edge of the fire. So this is going on, helicopter spooling right now. It's 13 miles away at the Cove Creek Helibase. Then at 1519, another 7 minutes. They call back to the Helibase.
Cramer Helibase, what's the status of 166?
He should be there shortly.
Copy that.
It had to be loud. The wind is howling. The description of the smoke coming up the cache bar drainage was that it was hugging the ground. It was hugging the slope. The wind was driving it into the slope and just following the ground, peeling over the ridge line, and then joining into the main column in Cramer Creek. 1520, helicopter was over H2 and couldn't land due to the smoke. Told them we can't land. So at that point, they said they were taking off on foot. They didn't say which way they were going, just that they were leaving on foot. And really, if you look at timelines of the spread, by about 1520, that was it. All the doors were closed. They wouldn't have had time to get around the head here. They couldn't get down to the safety zone this way. And without a clear option of bailing over the ridge in the Cramer Creek side, because that was also blowing up at that time, they really had nowhere to go, except where they didn't think there was fire coming at them, which is roughly that direction. Initially, once that fire front got established and started really moving up the drainage, it was running right around 1.5 to 2 miles an hour. By the time it got 3/4 of the way up the drainage, down at the base of the slope below H2, they were estimating closer to 4 to 6 miles an hour. So you get this repetitive, iterative process where you've got fire intensity pulling fresh air in at the base, which intensifies the fire and keeps feeding that. And as this starts to build and move up the drainage, it kept accelerating, and it became almost like a runaway locomotive barreling up the drainage and blasting over the ridge line.
Hey, some support up here right now.
I grew up here in Salmon and went to high school with Jeff and worked with Jeff for numerous years here on the Salmon Chalice. And so there was that sense of worry and concern and you're hoping everything's okay. So it's a delicate situation. I don't really know how to describe it, but it's not something you want to ever find yourself in. Sitting on the mountain, you felt like you weren't helping. You wanted to help. You wanted to do something. You couldn't get anybody on the radio at H2, and you wanted to do something. So what we did was we hiked down, hoping to catch a ride then to Hella Base, to where we could actually feel like we were going to contribute. And then from there, we found out later that there had been it was a fatality fire, and then it just kind of struck us sitting there at Hella Base, making the phone calls home, just saying, hey, I don't know what you're going to hear, but I'm safe. Don't worry about myself. It was unnerving.